guys, Sandra here. Welcome. Last night I finished reading Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World, or book 1 of the Wheel of Time series, and I have to say, I don't think there's anything that I'm going to say that hasn't already been said before, but I'm going to say it anyway. I finished reading this last night. I read it on both paperback and digitally through the Libby library app. The thing about the library app was it included an additional prologue chapter. So this one started out at Dragonmount, whereas the Libby one started at Earlier Ravens, was the name of the chapter, and it was Randall Thor, Egwene, Matt, Perrin, when they were all children growing up into reverse. It wasn't a necessary chapter, but it did give you a glimpse into them just growing up together and the relationships they had with each other and just going about this sheep herder town and this tobacco farming town and just some of their customs and their way of life. Even back then, the ravens in the dark when watching was a thing. So skipping back to the prologue of Dragonmount, I remember the first time I tried reading that part, I was all over the place. I was like, who is this guy? This dragon reborn Lews Therin? Who is this Sheotan? Who is this guy? This guy is like lost his mind and then he disappears and creates like some giant mountain in the middle of nowhere, and then it cuts to present day, Two Rivers, Randall Thor and Tam traveling to Emmonsfield. I don't feel like the language and the vocabulary was very hard at all to get your head around. I think the hardest part for me, as with any epic fantasy book, typically is the names or the cities. There are different ways to pronounce things. There are so many characters and their names are never just straightforward how to pronounce them. That can be distracting for me personally as a reader, but I'm a really slow reader in that I will go back and reread paragraphs 2, 3, 4 times in one sitting before moving on. I'm not really a repeat reader of an entire book holistically, unless I really, really, really love that book and have a lot of time on my hands. So I will typically just keep rereading as I'm reading the story the first time. Along with that, I tend to write a lot of notes, chapter by chapter. So like here, or all of my notes of the 50, it's hard to see on that. But I write notes. That's just how my brain works and how I process information. I'm also the type of person, every time they enter a new village or a city, I'm referring to the map. So I'm constantly flipping back and forth to the map. I'm always going to the glossary to check out, who someone is or what a phrase means. I'm constantly just flipping back and forth. So that makes me a slow reader in that sense, but that's just how I read. I will say, everyone has been telling me to read this book in my personal life for years and years and years without they themselves actually finishing the series. I'm like, okay, the Wheel of Time series is coming out. Fine. I'm going to finally carve out some time. I enjoyed it. There were definitely parts that dragged
on and on and on.
But it was really good. I wasn't scared by how many main characters there were. I really enjoyed reading the perspectives of different people. I will have to say probably my favorite character was Lan. It started off really slow just because it took some getting used to with how descriptive Robert Jordan is. He will go on and on and on about what people are wearing, how they carry themselves, the setting of where they are, what they're eating. He just goes into so much detail that it can kind of feel slow at times. My biggest problem with this book was probably the pacing in that sense. The first 4 chapters, initially you're introduced to Rand and his dad Tam, they're going into town, and then the next chapter is like introducing the Gleeman and then the Peddler. This goes on for 4 chapters, but really in chapter 5, I think, which is Winter Night, just the chapter name tells you that something crazy is going to happen. Chapter 5 is when that inciting incident kicks off, and this whole journey just kind of launches. But I will say, probably the first 4.5 chapters was one scene drawn out, but it was just introducing different characters that are a part of this web that is being woven by the Wheel of Time. I'm going to jump into spoilers. If you're watching this video, you've probably read the book, or you've probably already been exposed to enough spoilers. So after chapter 5, that was such an exciting chapter for me. because you know something bad's going to happen. They're getting ready for dinner, they're washing up, they're taking care of the animals, it's becoming nighttime, they're locking the doors, you know something's going to happen. And I love just anticipating when shit is going to hit the fan. And it does when the Trollocs come bursting through the door. And then you're wondering if Tam is going to be alive, and Rand is literally sneaking out the window. It was just really exciting. And then, the next chapter, you have Rand dragging his injured father through these scary, dark woods, miles and miles and miles and miles to Emond's Field, all the while dodging Trollocs and these really scary, mysterious, weird, faceless, we learned that they are Fades, but dark riders. And so it's very scary. Then he reaches Emond's Field and he thinks it's going to be the safe haven, and everything is on fire and people are trying to put the pieces back together. The Aes Sedai is there with Lan and they're trying to take care of people in the town, and Rand and Mat and Perrin, they end up leaving with them. From there, it felt very John Wick-like. Because in John Wick, when he has a contract out on him, people that look like normal people that he can be walking by anywhere are out to assassinate him for the bounty. And so it's literally John Wick walking around, having to watch his back constantly, and people are out to kill him. And that's what it felt like for chapters and chapters and chapters as they're hopping from village to city to inn. I lost count of how many inns they stayed at, especially after the group separates at Shadar Logoth, probably not saying that right, which, by the way, that chapter was freaky. There's like this dark, atmospheric, almost cinematic experience reading that chapter, as was the Waygate, after they enter the Waygate with Loial leading the way. Those chapters were so eerie and creepy, and you just know something bad is going to happen, and I really appreciated how those chapters were done. It very much felt like a cinematic experience to me. For me, it would drag on, especially when Rand and Mat were stopping at village after village, and Mat, his personality is slowly changing. He's very irritable, he's becoming very suspicious and paranoid of people, he's becoming very almost Gollum-like with the ring. He's just very like, don't touch my dagger, why are you looking at us? It's poisoning him. The John Wick thing, these dark friends that aren't monsters, they're just normal people that follow the shadow. They're literally trying to kill them at any opportunity, and you don't know if it's going to be a young teenager named Pater or a beautiful woman that could be an Aes Sedai like Moiraine. You just have no idea. And then top it off, there's like a beggar, like a disheveled beggar that's just looking for Rand and his friends, and you're like, who is that? I was very happy to find out that the beggar ended up being the peddler, Fane. Because Fane rubbed me the wrong way at the very beginning. He was just full of himself, very self-important. That's probably good foreshadowing, that he was going to be this dark friend. But I just didn't realize how deep, as in how many years he had been a dark friend. So that was really interesting. There was also, the story is dark. They're on the run, they're exhausted, they're losing their horses, they're getting new horses, they're constantly, having to watch their backs. They're having to sleep in the freezing cold, sleep in stables and haystacks, in really grungy storage rooms in sketchy inns, and you just feel for them. With all that said, there was so much humor between the friends and different characters that are introduced in the series that I was genuinely belly laughing at different parts. One of them was toward the end when they enter the Blight. It's so humid and muggy there, and it's so hot, and of course everyone is dressed for the cold because winter is still clinging on everywhere else in the world. You have the Ogier, Loial, I hope I'm saying his name correct. He starts unbuttoning his shirt, and then Robert Jordan describes him as having like this strip of hair, and then Rand notices him, and Loial is like apologizing for unbuttoning his shirt. And it was just so out of the blue, it made me laugh. But scenes like that. Characters like Egwene, I know these are all teenagers, maturity speaking, they're hormonal, they have longtime crushes on each other. Sometimes they have a very sibling type of relationship, but it's like the tension between Egwene and Rand just made me roll my eyes so many times because she was constantly calling everybody else a fool and sticking her nose in the air and just walking away, which was annoying to me. And then she would be just like flirting with whoever. So when she goes with the Tinkers, with Perrin, and she's all over Aram and dancing with him and accepting his bead necklace and all this crap, and then she's always suspicious and jealous of all of these girls like Elsa or, the Princess Elaine showing any kind of interest or having a conversation with Rand, like when she hears this secondhand. And I'm just like, bitch, you were all over Aram, so go away. So it was just times like that I rolled my eyes, but I can understand it. If I'm thinking back to myself at like 15, granted at 15 I would have never had the balls to go up to someone and tell them my feelings, so maybe it was an accurate depiction of teenagers. Whatever. It was just a really warm story. It was a dark story, but there were enough like warm together type of scenes and moments that really made the story enjoyable for me. It felt very Lord of the Rings-esque, which is what everybody says, especially for the end when they get to the Eye of the World and it's the Green Man tree guy there. There were parts that made me so sad. So in the beginning, when the Trollocs appear at Rand's farm, the scene where he goes to the stable and touches something wet and it's the dead sheep. Every time an animal dies in a movie or a book, I just like, part of my soul dies. And it makes me real sad. The sheep dying, Hopper, the wolf. When Hopper basically sacrificed himself in an attempt to help Perrin and Egwene get away from the White Cloaks, I was so destroyed because anytime the point of view kind of pops into the animal's head to give you what they're feeling and the pain that they're in, I'm just like, it's so soul crushing. It was really hard reading the parts with the wolves getting wounded and attacked and hurt or dying, and then the same when they were tracking behind this huge flocks of ravens that were traveling. It would show you a scene of a fox being pecked to death and just being a little bloody tuft of fur on the ground, really sad. Yeah, the animals. It's always the animals. I'm like, who gives a fuck about other people dying? But it's like the animals getting hurt. They're poor, hopeless animals. I enjoyed this story. It's typical in the sense that it follows a group of kids that start off on their little country farm, and then they go on this journey, city after city after city. They meet a princess along the way. There's portal travel that's really dark and scary. There's the Blight, which is like the Tainted Land. Those are all things that are very typical and epic fantasy type of things, I feel like. Like I said, this book read off very cinematically to me. Like I could picture it very easily. Even the Dreamwalker scenes. I am now a fan. I can't wait to see the Prime adaptation, whenever that's going to be. Now my choice is, okay, do I read The Great Hunt next, or do I step back and do New Spring, the prequel story? So I don't know. Maybe I'll do the prequel. I'm excited to dig in. Like I said, this is going to be a huge commitment. I'm liking it. I hear it gets better after the first quarter or first third of the books. We'll see how that goes. I'm really curious to read these series because of learning that Brandon Sanderson finished with the last 3 books after Robert Jordan passed. I really like Brandon Sanderson's style of writing, his pacing, how he connects everyone's stories together and bows everything up nicely. It's just a very satisfying type of ending. I have so many dog-eared pages in this and so many things written down, notes while taking this, so that I don't forget anything that happens, but it's very interesting. So, well done. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe if you do. I'm going to try and do one of these quick videos for each of the books as I get through them. I publish videos every Monday and Thursday, and see you later. Bye!